Hey everybody, my name is Matt.
And I'm Cheryl.
And we're in the Rockies.
And today we're at the Grand Canyon.
This video we're going to visit the Grand Canyon and see the views from Mather Point. We're going to watch a sunrise and a sunset. We're going to go to Hermit's Rest and Desert View Tower. We're going to swim in the Colorado River. We're going to play Where's Waldo in the Red Rock. And we're going to go for a mule ride on the edge of the Grand Canyon.
But our starting point is hot Las Vegas, Nevada. Since we're coming from Utah, it's a day's drive to the Grand Canyon. So we're breaking the drive with an evening in Sin City.
Our first stop is Area 15, an art district which has a very strange new attraction called Omega Mart. Omega Mart is essentially a very strange grocery store. It was created by an equally strange company called Meow Wolf. Secret passageways in the grocery store lead you to another world full of flashing lights, tunnels, and slides. This bizarre place is billed as a place where art meets entertainment. We've done a whole other video on Omega Mart.
Who's crazy enough to camp in Las Vegas? We are. Even our campground was a casino. Problem is, it's 115 degrees outside. We booked a camp spot next to a shade tree, but unfortunately, the shade tree was cut down.
We swam to escape the heat for a bit, but what was crazy is when our kids pointed out the hot tub was cooler than the air outside. So we took refuge in some of the famous casinos on the Strip. Did you know that Las Vegas has approximately half of the world's 40 largest hotel resorts? The city is truly a one-of-a-kind experience.
Caesar's Palace is surprisingly old by Las Vegas standards. It was built in 1966, and it's noteworthy because it was the first casino with a theme. The creator envisioned a world where you, the visitor, would be Caesar, living in opulence.
The Venetian might have been my favorite casino. The bridge escorts us across the globe to romantic Venice. They even have gondolas.
The Bellagio Water Show is a must. 1,200 sprayers shoot water up to 460 feet high. They move to the rhythm of 22 different tunes. Tonight, Frank Sinatra flies us to the moon.
I think our kids' favorite was the Mirage Volcano. The Mirage was built in 1989 at a cost of over $700 million, which was a staggering amount at the time. The Mirage marked a new era for Las Vegas, where resorts would offer entertainment for families and not just cheap lodging and food to entice gamblers. When I used to visit Las Vegas growing up, dinner buffets were like $2. Those days are gone, as all the new resorts followed the Mirage model. The creator, Steve Wynn, is known as the father of modern Las Vegas.
Nothing like adding a little extra heat to 115-degree weather.
Even though it's 109 degrees, I still like the fire.
People often worry about taking their kids to the Las Vegas Strip, and indeed our boy was approached by this showgirl for a photo. He just told her, no. Good boy. Okay, it's 110 degrees or something insane, so we are getting out of here. We're going to the Grand Canyon.
Our next stop is Williams, Arizona, which bills itself as the gateway to the Grand Canyon. Williams is a cute little Route 66 town. In fact, it was the last town on Route 66 that was bypassed by the interstate.
Williams also has a wonderful zoo called Bearizona. Bearizona is famous for its bears, of course. A few years ago, it adopted 3 orphaned cubs after their mother was euthanized after an encounter with a hiker in Montana. Bearizona stepped in to rescue these 3 gorgeous cubs, now named Hannah, Sky, and Crockett. The park built a $1 million enclosure for them to play. Bearizona has a drive-thru and a walk-thru. On the drive-thru, I have to take this wheel cover off because the wolves like to chew on them. We see all sorts of cool wildlife. It takes about 30 minutes to drive through, and you can drive through as many times as you like. One thing we liked is that The one-way road also has side loops that you can circle through to extend your drive and see more of the animals without having to drive all the way back around.
Then there's the walkthrough area. The walkthrough area has live music and many animals we have never seen before in a zoo. Or seen at all for that matter. We learned javelinas aren't pigs. We liked watching the badger. How many zoos have a badger? The walkthrough is also where you'll find the 3 grizzly cubs.
Our next stop is one of the 7 natural wonders of the world and the 17th National Park, the Grand Canyon. The first time you walk to the edge of the canyon, it will take your breath away.
Only a small percentage of people actually hike into the canyon. The Bright Angel Trail is the most popular trail in the park. Hikes are doable, but steep. The park signs are constant reminders that a lot of people overdo it. The Bright Angel Trail goes all the way down to the Colorado River and up to the other side of the canyon. It was created by a private owner before the park was established, and he charged tolls to anyone wanting to use it. So the national park built another trail to get around his annoying tolls. We'll hike that trail tomorrow.
The 1.5-mile rest house is a popular turnaround spot. At that point, we've descended 1,200 feet in 1.5 miles. Hiking down to it was super easy. It's the going back up part that is the reason for all the puking signs.
Teddy Roosevelt visited the Grand Canyon in 1903 and urged developers not to build anything here. They ignored him and built many buildings. This is called the Grand Canyon Village.
El Tovar was built to accommodate wealthy tourists who were the only kind of tourists in the early 1900s. It's an interesting blend of rustic American log architecture with Native American inspired southwestern design. The Bright Angel Lodge was built later to accommodate us lower class folk.
It was designed by the famous Mary Jane Coulter, who also designed other delightful buildings here at the Grand Canyon. Hopi House is a gift shop that uses Puebloan themes. Lookout Studio blends in with the surrounding rock to make it look like it just happened to be a nice spot to set up a telescope. You could also find animals at the Grand Canyon Village. Elk like the water fountains as well. This one walked right up to us, even blocking the restroom for a time. A nearby corral holds the mules after they return from a grueling 7-hour trip from the Colorado River below. It's often said that riding a mule to the bottom is just as uncomfortable as hiking.
Our next stop is Hermit's Rest, which is located a few miles west of the village. In the old days, people took a horse and buggy out here, then the automobile. But today, a shuttle is required during the busy season. Multiple stops along the way provide great views of the canyon. Powell Point is the only monument to the great John Wesley Powell, the man who lost an arm in the Civil War and then became the first person to successfully float the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon in a boat like this. At Hopi Point, we got lucky and ran into this ranger who was spotting California condors. He gave us an amazing impromptu ranger talk.
So we're at the south rim of the Grand Canyon. We're currently at Hopi Point, one of the best places for sunset in the park. We had a contest a couple years ago and we put it up to the visitors, and this place was voted as best sunset spot in Grand Canyon. But it also gives you a great view looking over at the north rim, and I want to point out some of the features out here that are all capped by the Coconino sandstone, some of the bigger monuments you see as you look out. This rounded one right over here is called Osiris Temple. And then if we move a little bit over here, the one straight across that's high on one end and lower on the other, that is called Isis Temple. And the one comes over here, you see this one here, that's Buddha Temple. And then over this way here, you can see that's sunlighted behind, but it's in the shade itself. It's a triangle, nice triangle shape. That is called Zoroaster Temple. All these formations were named by Clarence Stutton around 1900 as he came through the canyon.
We're so grateful to Ranger Joe for helping to make our trip more memorable. If you see park rangers, don't be afraid to ask them questions. You'll be amazed by their knowledge.
At the end of the line is Hermit's Rest. Mary Jane Coulter also designed this arch and building. Her inspiration was an actual prospector who mined in this area. He lived alone and kept to himself, earning him the nickname Hermit. Coulter designed the building to look haphazard, like a hermit just threw it together. She made it look unkept and messy inside, and even put soot on the walls for authenticity. She was quoted as saying, "It cost a lot of money to make it look old."
Our final stop of the day is Yavapai Point. This is another good place to take in a sunset. We found out from the ranger that the two most common questions they receive every day are, what can I do in an hour and a half? And where should I watch the sunset?
The next morning, we're going into the canyon again. This time it's the South Kaibab Trail, which I mentioned the park built to get around the toll trail. We like this one a little better than Bright Angel Trail. We thought it provided more shade and better views. Yavapai Point is about a mile down and provides a cool overlook. A little farther down is Cedar Ridge, which was well worth the extra hiking. Cedar Ridge reminded me of the top of Angel's Landing in Zion, and the switchbacks reminded me of Walter's Wiggles in Zion as well.
Williams may bill itself as the gateway to the Grand Canyon, but the closest city is actually Tusayan, located just 10 minutes south of the park. We're taking a break from the heat by getting a pistachio gelato at the Grand Canyon Chocolate Factory. They also sell plenty of other treats like popcorn and fudge. Across the street is the visitor center where you can see the boat I've mentioned a few times. Powell took a team of guys and 4 boats with him on his expedition. 2 of the boats smashed to pieces in the rapids. In 1984, some guys decided to build exact replicas of Powell's boats and even rafted through the canyon in them. Their river run was used for the making of an IMAX movie, which you can watch in this visitor center.
The most popular viewpoint at the Grand Canyon is Mather Point. The main visitor center is located here, as well as plenty of parking for all those visitors who have only allotted an hour and a half to see one of the world's 7 wonders. From here you can catch shuttles to get to most of the places on the South Rim. A decorative walkway takes you to the viewpoint. This is where most people see the Grand Canyon for the first time.
Gel bak buraya kadar geldik şu atmanla gidelim.
The rim trail connects the viewpoints and provides a little variety to the view as well. We're walking along the Trail of Time, a fairly recent interpretive display created by the park. The problem with geology for most of us is the lack of context. Millions and billions of years are incomprehensible. This display provides a visualization. Each step is a million years as you walk back into deep time. Rock displays show us what each layer of the canyon is made out of and gives the kids something to find along the way. We caught another sunset here, and my daughter dared me to dip my wife. Challenge accepted.
We camped at Mather Campground, the only campground located near the village. We thought it was fantastic, and we're still amazed it only cost about $20 per night. We even had visitors. One of them charged a camper who got a little too close. The next day, we're driving 4 hours to go 11 miles to the other side of the canyon. But as always, we're fitting in other activities. After an early 5:15 sunrise, we're eating breakfast at El Tovar.
Before the automobile, the only way to get to the national parks was by train. Those visitors needed a place to stay, so many of the iconic national parks like Yellowstone and Yosemite have lodges like El Tovar here at Grand Canyon. The Park Service wanted these buildings to blend into the environment as much as possible. This architectural style choice came to be called National Park Rustic, or for short, Parkitecture.
We really liked breakfast, especially the prickly pear syrup. Depending on where you sit, you might be able to see the canyon too. On the way to the North Rim, we're going to see 3 really cool things. First is Desert View Tower. This is another of Coulter's creations. This is one of the best viewpoints of the Colorado River, which we will drive down to today.
The second cool thing is Navajo Bridge, where we got to walk out over the Colorado River. The views were amazing, but the highlight was the 5 or 6 California condors we saw here. Condors have the biggest wingspan of any North American bird. They were once on the verge of extinction, but are now a major conservation success story.
Finally, we got to swim in the Colorado River at nearby Lee's Ferry. This is one of the few places where you can drive down to the Colorado River.
A few historical buildings remain from a time before Navajo Bridge existed, when the only way to cross the Colorado was by ferry.
It was 115 degrees outside. and the river is 48 degrees. That was great, but what we really enjoyed was this crazy rock formation where we played Where's Waldo.
Okay, this is what I used to do when I was little, is play Where's Waldo on the red rock. We got everybody hiding out here, and then Coop's gonna try to find them. All right, so Coop's scouting, trying to find.
Cheryl! Jack! Jack, right there!
We've arrived at Jacob Lake, which is the gateway to the north rim of the Grand Canyon. Jacob Lake is solitude heaven. There are no other towns even close to here. We loved our campground. Calling this a town is generous. It's basically a cafe, motel, and gas station. You absolutely must get a shake and cookie here. It's what Jacob Lake is famous for. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
Chocolate parfait. Chocolate chip. Okay, Cheryl, what was your favorite?
The lemon zucchini.
Yeah, we both tried the lemon zucchini and we loved it.
It was super good.
Jacob Lake is also famous for...
The Kaibab squirrel. This squirrel only lives here. The town, or is it a village? A hamlet? Anyway, they are very proud of this squirrel. At the nearby Forest Service, they have a monument to the great Teddy Roosevelt, who hunted mountain lions near here. Next to Teddy, they have another monument to the Kaibab squirrel.
Another funny thing about the town is that the lake it was named after is dried up. There's no lake at Jacob Lake, which is surprising to me because this area receives 12 feet of snow per year. However, it gets dry during the summer and forest fires are a real threat. One interesting place we found was this fire tower lookout. This rickety structure was built back in the 1930s. It's still used today to spot the early stages of a fire.
Kind of windy and wobbly up top, which is why I'm down here now.
Oh, yikes.
The wind was picking up and it was shaking up there.
Was it?
Yeah.
The sunset beautiful?
Pretty, and then really pretty views of the forest all around. I liked it.
If you're still watching, here's your big insider tip. The north rim of the Grand Canyon is the same distance from Las Vegas and has hardly any crowds. While it lacks the charming village and some of the sheer cliffs, it makes up for it with more colorful views and the Grand Canyon Lodge. Also, the north rim fits perfectly into a Zion and Bryce National Park road trip by cutting out the 4-hour detour around the canyon to the south rim.
The Grand Canyon Lodge was built in the 1920s. It burned down only a few years later, but was rebuilt in the 1930s. It provides stunning views of the canyon. The views while eating here beat El Tovar's. Get a drink at the Rough Rider Saloon and take in more views while relaxing on the deck. It's only a short walk to Bright Angel Point where you can see the south rim. Inside the lodge is a statue of a donkey. People like to rub his nose for good luck. This is Brighty, the famous Grand Canyon donkey. I've covered the story of Brighty, whose life was turned into a book and a movie, in another video. Speaking of donkeys, we booked ourselves a mule ride. Okay, tell me who you're riding.
I'm gonna ride Chi-Chi.
Slim. No, I'm riding Gus.
I'm riding Slim,
Not Secretariat?
not Secretariat.
Bummer. Okay, and remember the 2 rules. No leaning, no screaming.
No leaning, no screaming.
Now, this is something I've never seen.
Gus,
Dude, you got your hands full.
Documented the whole deal right there. Let me see you stand clear up. Climb up there.
go.
Good job.
Fun, Molly. See you, Cheryl. Good luck, Dennis. The north rim of the canyon also has some scenic drives and plenty of viewpoints. Uncle Jim's cave was a fun little experience for us. We also saw some bison, which aren't native to the Grand Canyon, and they aren't welcome here. Look out, bison, you might get the same treatment as the donkeys. Point Imperial is a popular viewpoint. But our favorite was the Angel's Window at Cape Royal. Walk out on top of this narrow ledge for the best sheer drops. After 3 days of looking into the canyon, we're ready to move on. Up next is Bryce Canyon, which we'll cover in another video. But I want to leave you with one final thought about the Grand Canyon. In the early 1900s, the El Tovar kept a logbook for visitors to write their impressions of the canyon. Thankfully, this book was preserved. I took a moment to compare the old-timers' impressions with those from people today using online sources like TripAdvisor. The early visitors were much more descriptive with their impressions. They used literature like Shakespeare and invoked both God and the devil to explain the canyon. Today's visitors can, of course, see images or watch videos about the canyon before visiting. It's much more famous now, and our day is less prone to overly describing things anyway. The most common description then, as well as today, is to not attempt to describe it. Visitors today say, pictures don't do it justice. Visitors back then said, words don't do it justice. I couldn't have not said it better myself. Thanks for watching.